The silent detection. The void stretched endlessly around the alien armada, a sea of stars and drifting shadows. Their ships moved in perfect formation, black silhouettes sliding across the dark. Thousands of warships, each armed with weapons that could burn planets, glided with steady confidence. For centuries, this fleet had ruled the sector, enforcing the will of their empire. To them, no enemy remained strong enough to resist. On the command bridge of the flagship, Captain Vorlak stood tall. His cold yellow eyes scanned the tactical display where every ship in the armada showed as glowing points of light. Order, control, power. To him, this was normal. Another sector secured, he muttered. Another victory before it even begins. But then something shifted. A quiet beep broke the steady rhythm of the scanners. The officer at the console frowned and leaned closer. Captain, sensors are picking up something unusual. Vorlak turned slowly. His claws tapped against the railing. Unusual? Be precise. The officer swallowed, his voice uneasy. An object, far edge of the system. No transponder, no beacon. It's large, extremely large. The bridge grew quieter. Officers turned their heads, whispers starting. A single object was not unusual in space, but size meant power. And power meant threat. Show me. The display shifted. At first, it was just a faint blip, almost lost in the static. Then the scanners refined the signal, sharpening the image. A massive outline appeared. Its profile was long, sharp-edged, and far too controlled to be natural. Vorlak narrowed his eyes. What kind of ship is that? No one answered immediately. The silence itself was heavy. Finally, the sensor officer spoke, his voice almost a whisper. The signature. It matches old archives. Old, human archives. The word human seemed to echo across the bridge like a curse. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Even the constant hum of the flagship's engines seemed distant. The younger officers glanced nervously at each other while the older ones stiffened, remembering stories told in quiet voices. That is impossible, Vorlak snapped. His claws dug into the railing. Humanity was crushed long ago, their fleets destroyed, their colonies burned. They are nothing. Yet the image on the screen did not vanish. It only grew clearer as the scanners locked onto it. The communications officer spoke, voice trembling. It's not broadcasting, no identification, code, no Empire signal. Captain, it's just watching. A cold silence filled the air. One of the junior lieutenants whispered. The stories said, if you ever see a human warship, you are already dead. Enough, Vorlak roared, but his voice, though harsh, did not erase the unease in the room. The object moved closer. Its signal was steady, its approach slow but deliberate. It did not rush. It did not hide. It simply advanced as though it had all the time in the galaxy. Every officer on the bridge leaned forward, their hearts pounding. Range? Vorlak demanded. Closing. Slowly. Captain, it's almost taunting us. Taunting? Vorlak hissed. It's one ship. We have an armada of thousands. Do not let superstition cloud your judgment. Yet even as he said the words, he felt the weight in the air. He felt the way his officer's eyes lingered on the shape. A warship, blacker than the void itself, cutting through the stars like a blade. The tactical officer cleared his throat. Sir, may I remind you of the records? The humans built machines of war that should not have existed. Ships that destroyed fleets in silence. Weapons that defied logic. They say lies, Vorlak snapped, but his voice cracked. Slightly, betraying a fear he would never admit. The ship drew nearer and the scanners updated again. Now the details of the hull were visible. Armor plates layered like scales, running endlessly along its massive frame. The alien officers stared, each breath shallow. One whispered, "It's big enough to block a star." Another muttered, "Why is it here? Why now?" On the far side of the bridge, the young lieutenant who had spoken earlier pressed his hand against the console, trying to steady his voice. Sir, what if it's not here to fight? What if it's here to remind us? The words chilled the air. Vorlak turned sharply toward him, but for once he did not reply. The thought had already entered his own mind. If the humans truly had returned, if they had sent this warship as a message, then the Empire was no longer as safe as it believed. The scanners beeped again, closer, stronger. The ship's shadow stretched across the tactical display, swallowing the smaller points of the alien fleet. The communications officer's voice cracked. "Captain, it just turned its sensors toward us." A heavy silence fell. The alien crew froze, each of them feeling the invisible weight of a predator's gaze. It was as though the warship wasn't a machine but something alive, watching, judging. Vorlak's hands tightened around the railing until the metal groaned. "Hold position," he growled. "Do not move. Do not fire. We will not show weakness." But inside, he knew. Weakness had already been revealed. Not by weapons, not by numbers, but by fear. The alien bridge was silent, every officer locked, in the same thought. If this was truly a human warship, then the Armada was already standing on the edge of madness. The unknown signal. The alien flagship drifted in silence, its bridge heavy with tension. No one spoke loudly. Even the usual chatter of officers checking systems had faded into whispers. On the tactical display, the massive shadow of the unknown ship still glowed, calm and steady, while the alien Armada sat frozen in formation. Captain Vorlak's jaw tightened. His instincts told him to act, but centuries of command also warned him that rash action could doom them all. Finally, he growled, "Open the archives. Show me everything the Empire has on humanity." The data officer hesitated, then tapped his console. The display flickered, switching to old files locked under restricted access. Words scrolled across the screen. Classified. Human conflict records. The younger crew leaned closer, their eyes wide. They had heard stories, but most had believed them to be myths. Tales told to frighten cadets or explain strange wreckages found drifting in space. One file opened. Grainy images of burning fleets, shattered planets, and colossal warships shaped like blades in the dark. The records described how a single human vessel had once erased an entire battle group in less than an hour. An ensign whispered, "One ship did this?" The tactical officer nodded grimly. Yes. They were never the largest empire, but their weapons, their ships, no one understood how they worked. Some said they were built to fight things even worse than us. A cold shiver ran through the crew. Vorlak slammed his fist against the railing. Enough with legends, facts only. The humans were destroyed, their colonies reduced to ash, their fleets hunted down. But his words did not calm the bridge. The unknown ship's signal was still there, and it was closing distance. The communications officer spoke, voice trembling. "Captain, the ship is transmitting." Every eye turned sharply toward him. Vorlak hissed, "What kind of transmission?" "It's not language. It's a pulse, a repeating signal, low frequency. It doesn't match any Empire code." The sound played over the bridge speakers, a deep, slow thrum that seemed to crawl into the bones of every officer. It wasn't violent, but it wasn't friendly either. It felt like a heartbeat, steady and patient. The young lieutenant swallowed, hard. "It's warning us." "No," another officer muttered. "It's testing us, seeing if we panic." The bridge filled with quiet arguments, whispers of fear. Vorlak snarled, "Silence. This ship dares to mock us? Very well. Order 2 destroyers forward. They will scan it directly and report back." The order went out. On the display, 2 alien ships broke formation and crept toward the massive shadow. Their engines burned softly against the black void. Everyone watched. Seconds stretched like hours. The 2 destroyers approached closer, closer, until the human warship loomed before them. Its size dwarfed them both, a black mountain floating in space. The scanner feeds from the destroyers lit up. Hull composition, unknown, one officer read. Energy readings off the charts, Captain, it's not just metal, it's layered, almost alive. The second feed crackled. It's watching us. I can feel it. It's like staring into a predator's eye. Then, static. The bridge gasped as both feeds cut out. The destroyer's signals vanished. No explosion, no debris, no warning. They were simply gone. Panic rippled through the bridge. What happened? Vorlak shouted. Find them. Where? Did they go? The scanners searched, but space was empty. No wreckage, no trails. The two destroyers had disappeared as if swallowed by the void itself. A nervous ensign whispered, "It erased them." Without firing, another officer hissed, "Back," or worse, it took them. Fear spread like wildfire. Officers whispered in low voices, arguing, their discipline cracking. Some said they should flee, others that they should attack at once. Vorlak's claws dug into the railing. His mind raced. If they attacked and failed, the entire armada would collapse. If they fled, they would carry shame back to the Empire and, worse, bring the ship with them. The unknown signal pulsed again, louder this time. The sound shook through the bridge, vibrating in every chest. Boom, boom, boom. The lieutenant whispered, "It's not a message, it's a countdown." The room went dead silent. For the first time in his long career, Captain Vorlak felt true fear. The warship was not rushing. It was not attacking. It was waiting, measuring them. He straightened, forcing strength into his voice. "Hold the line. Do not break formation. We will face this as an empire." But his officers saw the truth in his eyes. He was afraid. The human warship loomed larger on the display, the pulse of its signal echoing in their bones. The Armada had faced countless enemies before, but never like this. And deep inside, every alien officer knew the same thing. The signal was not unknown anymore. It was death, coming closer. First contact, the alien Armada floated in silence, 1,000 warships waiting in tight formation. But inside every bridge, fear spread like a sickness. The unknown signal had grown louder, its deep pulse echoing in the bones of every crew member. 2 destroyers had already vanished without a trace, and no one knew how or why. On the flagship's bridge, Captain Vorlak's face was pale beneath his scales. He gripped the railing so tightly that the metal groaned. His voice was hard, but everyone could hear the strain in it. "Keep scanners locked. No one fires without my order." The officers obeyed, though their hands shook as they worked. Their eyes flickered nervously to the tactical display where the human warship's shadow loomed larger and larger. It did not speed up. It did not hide. It moved slowly, steadily, as though daring them to act. One officer whispered, "It wants us to see it." And then, finally, they did. The scanners sharpened, clearing the static. The massive ship appeared on the central display, its form stretching across the screen. A hull darker than the void itself, armored plates like layered scales, sharp angles designed to cut through both matter and light. Its size dwarfed the alien battleships, long, endless, terrifying. Gasps filled the bridge. "It's bigger than any super dreadnought," one officer whispered. Another's voice cracked. "That thing isn't a ship. It's a nightmare." The warship's surface flickered faintly with strange lights. They weren't running lights like normal vessels, they were deeper, pulsing symbols across its hull, glowing like veins. It looked alive. The comms officer whispered, "Captain, it's not transmitting anymore, it's just staring at us." Everyone felt it. The ship wasn't just a machine. It felt like a predator. Watching, waiting, choosing. Then the warship did something that froze every alien heart. It tilted, just slightly, slowly. The massive hull shifted, turning until its weapons faced directly toward the flagship. The bridge went deathly silent. Even breathing seemed too loud. A junior lieutenant's hands trembled as he whispered, "If it fires, we're dead. One shot, that's all it will take." Vorlak snarled, but his voice broke. Silence. Hold steady. Do not show fear. But fear was already there. It thickened the air like poison. The tactical officer reported in a shaking voice. Energy. Levels rising. Captain, its weapons are charging. The crew's hearts pounded. Some officers closed their eyes, waiting for the end. But the shot never came. Instead, a beam of light swept across the alien armada. Not a weapon. At least not yet. It was a scanner. The human warship was scanning them. Every ship. Every crew member. The aliens shifted uneasily in their seats. Being scanned was normal in war. But this felt different. It wasn't a tactical scan. It felt like judgment. The young lieutenant whispered, "It's counting us." Another muttered, "No, it's measuring which one of us dies first." The scanner beam faded. The warship went still again, silent and patient as if it had all eternity to wait. On smaller ships across the armada, panic began to spread. Some captains shouted over comms to fire immediately. Others screamed to retreat. The fleet wavered, their perfect formation beginning to break. On the flagship bridge, the comms erupted with voices. "Orders, Captain." "What do we do?" "It's too strong. We must run." Vorlak slammed his claws into the console, sparks flying. "Hold your positions. The Empire does not run from ghosts." But his voice was drowned out by the fear in his officers' eyes. Then, for the first time, the human warship spoke. Not in words. Not in any known language. Across every alien comm channel, a single sound filled the air. Deep, cold, mechanical. A tone that shook the heart. 3 long notes. Boom, 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 like a warning or a countdown. Every officer froze. Every crew member felt it in their chest. The young lieutenant whispered, "First contact." Vorlak stared at the massive shadow, his heart pounding like the signal itself. For the first time he admitted the truth, even if only to himself. This wasn't first contact. This was the beginning of the end. Panic in the armada. The alien armada stretched across the void like a wall of firepower. Thousands of ships, thousands of weapons. Yet in that moment, all their power felt like dust. The human warship hung before them, silent, massive, unshaken. It had scanned them, it had turned its weapons toward them, and it had spoken through a sound no one could forget. 3 long tones, heavy as the toll of death. Boom, boom, boom. On the flagship bridge, Captain Vorlak barked orders, but his words could not erase the fear already spreading across the fleet. His officers whispered, their voices tight with dread. The sound had done something to them. It wasn't just noise. It was in their heads, their hearts, their bones. On comms across the armada, captains began to break. "Captain Vorlak, we should retreat, now. No, fire all weapons before it destroys us. My crew refuses to fight, they're panicking." Voices overlapped, desperate, afraid. Discipline crumbled. Vorlak slammed his claws into the console. Sparks flew. "Silence, you are officers of the Empire, hold your lines." But his voice was lost in the storm. On one destroyer, a panicked crewman fired a torpedo without orders. The glowing missile streaked through space toward the human warship. Every alien eye watched. The torpedo flew straight, fast, deadly. It slammed into the warship's hull and vanished. No explosion, no shield flare, no damage. The weapon simply blinked out of existence, as if swallowed by the void. A scream echoed across comms. "It devours our weapons, nothing can hurt it." Fear spread like fire in dry grass. Other ships began to fire wildly. Torpedoes, beams, plasma cannons. Hundreds of shots lit up the void, racing toward the silent giant. The result was the same. Every weapon vanished on impact. No explosions, no smoke, no scars. The human warship didn't even move. It didn't dodge. It simply endured. On the flagship bridge, the tactical officer's hands shook as he whispered, "It's not fighting back, because it doesn't need to." Vorlak roared, hold fire," but already it was too late. Chaos spread. Some ships broke formation, turning sharply to retreat. Their sudden movements crashed into allies beside them. Collisions lit the darkness, fire spreading across hulls. Other captains shouted at their crews to obey orders, but fear won faster than discipline. Entire ships shut down weapons and engines, drifting helplessly, their crews hiding in terror. On the bridge of the flagship, the comms filled with screaming voices. They're abandoning. Post. Mutiny on Cruiser 7. Half the fleet is breaking away. The Empire's greatest armada was dissolving without a single human shot fired. The young lieutenant on Vorlak's bridge whispered, "This is what they wanted. Panic, collapse, madness. They don't need to kill us. We're killing ourselves." Vorlak bared his fangs, fury burning in his chest, but even he could not deny the truth. The human warship was like a shadow over their minds. It was a weapon more powerful than any cannon, fear itself. And then the warship moved. Only a little. Just a shift in position, its massive hull gliding slowly to one side. But to the alien fleet it was like the sky falling. Ships screamed warnings, captains shouted to retreat. The shift alone was enough to break the last of their order. "A cruiser," Captain cried over comms. "It's aiming at us!" "Break away. Save yourselves." The cruiser turned sharply to flee, crashing into a smaller frigate. Both ships erupted in flames. The blast shook the formation, sending shockwaves through the fleet. Vorlak shouted, "No one moves. Stay in formation or we die faster." But his crew didn't believe him anymore. The fear was too deep. The human warship's weapons glowed faintly, light gathering along its sides. It wasn't firing yet, but it could. Everyone saw it. Everyone knew it, and that was enough. On dozens of alien ships, discipline shattered. Crew mutinied against their officers. Weapons were fired at allies in blind terror. Frigates rammed destroyers. Battleships shot at anything that moved. The Empire's proud armada turned on itself. Vorlak's voice was drowned out by comms filled with madness. "They're firing at us. Our own fleet is attacking. The humans have cursed us," the young lieutenant whispered again, almost to himself. The stories were true. One human warship can destroy an Empire fleet without firing a single shot. On the display, the chaos spread. Ships exploded. Flames lit the void. The armada was no longer a fleet, it was a storm of panic tearing itself apart. And through it all, the human warship drifted silently. Watching. Waiting. It had not spoken again. It had not fired a shot, it didn't need to. The first strike, the void, was filled with fire. Alien ships collided, broke apart, and burned against the cold stars. Once proud warships of the Empire now turned their weapons against each other in madness. The human warship had not fired once, yet half the armada was already lost. On the flagship bridge, Captain Vorlak's claws dug into the railing until sparks flew. His eyes burned with rage and fear. "Order them back into formation," he roared. But the comms only answered with screams. "Frigate 27 is gone. Cruiser 8 is mutinying. Battleship squadron collapsing." The Empire's greatest fleet was tearing itself apart. Then the scanners beeped. The human warship was moving. Every officer froze. On the display, the black giant turned slightly, its massive hull glowing faintly as energy gathered along its sides. The lights pulsed brighter, running like rivers across its armored plates. The tactical officer whispered, his voice cracking, "Captain, it's charging weapons." A silence fell over the bridge. Every officer felt their hearts stop. Vorlak's voice was low, broken. "All ships, brace for impact." And then it came. A single beam, no thunder, no roar, just light, silent, blinding, unstoppable. The warship fired one blast, a streak of pure energy that tore across the void. 3 alien cruisers vanished instantly, their hulls dissolving like paper in flame. The beam cut through them as if they were never there, then continued, slicing through a battleship squadron. In less than a breath, 6 warships were gone, reduced to nothing. Gasps filled the flagship bridge. It destroyed them in one shot. No weapon should be that strong. But it wasn't just the destruction. It was the precision. The human warship hadn't fired wildly. It had aimed carefully, cutting just enough to remind them what it could do. And the message was clear. This is only the beginning. Across the fleet, panic turned into chaos. Some ships tried to return fire, launching plasma bolts and torpedoes at the human ship. But the results were the same. Every shot disappeared before impact, as if swallowed by the void. One captain shouted over comms, his voice breaking, "It's untouchable. No weapon can harm it." Another screamed, "Retreat! Retreat!" Ships began to break away, their engines burning bright as they tried to flee. But the human warship shifted again, slow and deliberate, blocking their path like a mountain in space. The comms filled with cries. "It's hurting us! We can't escape! It's playing with us!" On the flagship bridge, Vorlak's hands shook. He had commanded fleets for decades. He had fought rebels, pirates, rival empires. But he had never seen anything like this. Never an enemy so powerful, so calm, so patient. The tactical officer whispered, "It's not here to fight us, Captain. It's here to break us." Vorlak's chest tightened. He knew the officer was right. The warship didn't need to destroy every vessel. It only needed to show them one strike, one impossible shot, and the rest of the fleet would destroy itself. The scanners beeped again. More energy readings. The human warship was preparing a second strike. "Shields at maximum," Vorlak ordered. "Divert all power." The flagship's shields flared to life, glowing with layers of protection. Around them, a few surviving battleships followed suit, raising their defenses. The human warship fired. This time, the beam swept across space like a scythe. A line of alien ships, frigates, destroyers, cruisers, vanished in a chain of explosions. The shields didn't matter. The defenses meant nothing. When the light faded, silence filled the comms. No one dared speak. No one dared breathe. The young lieutenant whispered, "One ship, and an Empire's armada is gone." Vorlak's voice cracked. "No, not yet. We still stand." But even as he said the words, the truth pressed against his chest. The fleet no longer stood. It cowered. It broke. It died. The human warship's lights dimmed again, fading into silence. It had fired twice. It didn't need more. All across the surviving ships, discipline collapsed. Some crews abandoned their posts. Others tried to flee, engines screaming into the void. But no matter where they turned, the human ship was there, silent, watching, waiting for the next strike. On the flagship bridge, the comms filled with broken voices, requesting permission to surrender. "No, don't. They'll kill us anyway. The Empire is finished." Vorlak closed his eyes. He had believed in the Empire's power. He had believed in control, in fear, in firepower. But now, facing a single human warship, he finally understood. The Empire had never destroyed humanity. Humanity had only been waiting. And now, they had returned. The first strike, the void was filled with fire. Alien ships collided, broke apart, and burned against the cold stars. Once proud warships of the Empire now turned their weapons against each other in madness. The human warship had not fired once, yet half the armada was already lost. On the flagship bridge, Captain Vorlak's claws dug into the railing until sparks flew. His eyes burned with rage and fear. "Order them back into formation," he roared. But the comms only answered with screams. "Frigate 27 is gone. Cruiser 8 is mutinying. Battleship squadron collapsing." The Empire's greatest fleet was tearing itself apart. Then the scanners beeped. The human warship was moving. Every officer froze. On the display, the black giant turned slightly, its massive hull glowing faintly as energy gathered along its sides. The lights pulsed brighter, running like rivers across its armored plates. The tactical officer whispered, his voice cracking, "Captain, it's charging weapons." A silence fell over the bridge. Every officer felt their hearts stop. Vorlak's voice was low, broken. "All ships, brace for impact. And then it came. A single beam, no thunder, no roar, just light, silent, blinding, unstoppable. The warship fired one blast, a streak of pure energy that tore across the void. 3 alien cruisers vanished instantly, their hulls dissolving like paper in flame. The beam cut through them as if they were never there, then continued slicing through a battleship squadron. In less than a breath, 6 warships were gone, reduced to nothing. Gasps filled the flagship bridge. It destroyed them in one shot. No weapon should be that strong. But it wasn't just the destruction. It was the precision. The human warship hadn't fired wildly. It had aimed carefully, cutting just enough to remind them what it could do. And the message was clear. This is only the beginning. Across the fleet, panic turned into chaos. Some ships tried to return fire, launching plasma bolts and torpedoes at the human ship, but the results were the same. Every shot disappeared before impact, as if swallowed by the void. One captain shouted over comms, his voice breaking, "It's untouchable. No weapon can harm it." Another screamed, "Retreat! Retreat!" Ships began to break away, their engines burning bright as they tried to flee. But the human warship shifted again, slow and deliberate, blocking their path like a mountain in space. The comms filled with cries. "It's hurting us! We can't escape! It's playing with us!" On the flagship bridge, Vorlak's hands shook. He had commanded fleets for decades. He had fought rebels, pirates, rival empires. But he had never seen anything like this. Never an enemy so powerful, so calm, so patient. The tactical officer whispered, "It's not here to fight us, Captain. It's here to break us." Vorlak's chest tightened. He knew the officer was right. The warship didn't need to destroy every vessel. It only needed to show them one strike, one impossible shot, and the rest of the fleet would destroy itself. The scanners beeped again. More energy readings. The human warship was preparing a second strike. "Shields at maximum," Vorlak ordered. "Divert all power." The flagship's shields flared to life, glowing with layers of protection. Around them, a few surviving battleships followed suit, raising their defenses. The human warship fired. This time the beam swept across space like a scythe. A line of alien ships, frigates, destroyers, cruisers, vanished in a chain of explosions. The shields didn't matter. The defenses meant nothing. When the light faded, silence filled the comms. No one dared speak. No one dared breathe. The young lieutenant whispered, "One ship, and an Empire's armada is gone." Vorlak's voice cracked. "No, not yet. We still stand." But even as he said the words, the truth pressed against his chest. The fleet no longer stood. It cowered. It broke. It died. The human warship's lights dimmed again, fading into silence. It had fired twice. It didn't need more. All across the surviving ships, discipline collapsed. Some crews abandoned their posts. Others tried to flee, engines screaming into the void. But no matter where they turned, the human ship was there, silent, watching, waiting for the next strike. On the flagship bridge, the comms filled with broken voices, requesting permission to surrender. "No, don't. They'll kill us anyway. The Empire is finished." Vorlak closed his eyes. He had believed in the Empire's power. He had believed in control, in fear, in firepower. But now, facing a single human warship, he finally understood. The Empire had never destroyed humanity. Humanity had only been waiting. And now, they had returned. The scanners beeped. The human warship had turned slightly, facing the flagship now. Its weapons were not glowing, but its presence alone was enough to freeze every officer in place. The tactical officer's voice shook. "Captain, it's looking at us." For a long moment, no one moved. The bridge was silent but for the hum of dying consoles. Every officer felt the same truth. The end was near, but the strike never came. Instead, the warship dimmed its lights again, fading into shadow. It did not fire. It did not advance. It simply turned away, leaving the wreckage of the Empire's fleet scattered behind, the comms filled with desperate cries. "It's leaving? Why? Why spare us? What does it want?" Vorlak's chest heaved. He wanted to believe it was mercy, but deep inside he knew better. It wasn't mercy. It was worse. The warship had left them alive so they could carry the story, so they could spread the fear. As the massive shadow drifted back into the void, its lights fading into nothingness, the Empire survivors knew their lives were no longer their own. They were witnesses to humanity's return, and witnesses always carried the weight of terror, the silent departure. The battlefield was no longer a battlefield. It was a graveyard. Wreckage drifted across the void, glowing faintly with fire and shattered metal. Once the Empire's fleet had stretched proudly across the stars, thousands of warships strong. Now only a few broken survivors floated in silence, their crews too stunned to speak. At the center of it all was the human warship. Its massive black hull loomed like a shadow over the dying fleet, its form so vast it seemed to block out the stars themselves. It had fired only twice. It had spoken only in pulses of sound. Yet it had shattered the Armada more completely than any enemy in the Empire's long history. On the flagship bridge, Captain Vorlak stood rigid, his claws gripping the railing. His crew was silent, their eyes hollow, their faces pale with fear. None dared move. None dared breathe loudly. Every eye remained fixed on the massive figure outside, waiting for the final strike. But the strike never came. The human warship turned, slowly, its engines glowing faintly, its hull gleaming with strange lights that pulsed like veins of fire. Instead of advancing, it drifted away, leaving behind the wreckage of the Empire's fleet. Gasps broke across the bridge. Officers exchanged stunned looks. Some whispered in disbelief. "It's leaving. Why? Why spare us? What does it want from us?" No one had the answer. Vorlak's chest rose and fell heavily. His voice cracked as he spoke. "It doesn't need to kill us. We are already defeated." The young lieutenant looked up from his console, his eyes wide with understanding. "It wants us to live, to carry the story." The words sank into the room like ice. That was the true weapon. Not destruction, not firepower. Fear. The human warship had left them alive so that they would return to their empire with the tale, so that the entire galaxy would hear what had happened. The scanners beeped one last time. The warship's signal echoed across every surviving ship, the same sound they had heard before. 3 long tones, deep and heavy, filling their bones with dread. Boom, 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 and then silence. The signal faded. The warship vanished into the black, swallowed by the void as though it had never existed. No jump flash, no trail, no evidence left behind. One moment it was there, and the next, it was gone. On the bridge, the silence was suffocating. The crew stared at the empty stars, unable to speak. Some officers wept quietly, their tears falling against their consoles. Others sat frozen, too afraid to even move. Finally, Vorlak broke the silence. His voice was low, heavy, and filled with something his crew had never heard from him before. "Defeat. Signal the survivors," he said. "Tell them to retreat. Tell them to return home." The comms crackled with weak voices from scattered ships. None spoke with pride. None spoke of victory. They only whispered their fear. "Did you see it? It was like a shadow in the stars. We cannot fight them. No one can." The survivors turned their ships toward home, their engines flickering weakly. Behind them, wreckage burned like scattered candles in the dark. As the flagship pulled away, Vorlak looked one last time at the empty void where the human warship had disappeared. His chest tightened, his breath shaking. He finally understood. The Empire had not destroyed humanity. Humanity had chosen silence, chosen to wait, chosen to return when the galaxy had forgotten, and now, with only one ship, they had reminded everyone. The young lieutenant whispered the words everyone feared to speak aloud. "This is only the beginning." Vorlak closed his eyes. The image of the human warship burned into his mind, endless and unshakable. He knew the story would spread. He knew the fear would grow. And he knew the Empire would never sleep peacefully again. The human warship was gone. But its shadow would remain, forever.